into another dimension, a dimension of understanding. You are entering a place where reality collides with truth. There are no limits, there are no boundaries. This is OffPlanet Radio.
Welcome once again to OffPlanet Radio Live. I'm Randy Moggins. It is Wednesday, the 27th of June, 2012. Interesting show tonight. And some things coming up as well that we want to talk about. I do have my guest on the line, and we'll bring him up in a minute. It looks like, everything's going real good tonight. Anyway, July 11th. You want to mark this? We're going to have a big show that night. My friend Krista is going to return. I'm not sure what she's going to talk about exactly, but she's always fun and interesting. That's the first hour, 10 o'clock to 11:30 p.m. extended show. Steve Richards from Holographic Kinetics is going to be here, and we are going to take open lines, questions and answers, and Steve is going to go deep into holographic kinetics. This is probably one of the biggest shows we've ever done, was the interview that Duncan Miranda and Anna Lee and I did with Steve Richards, and it has gone all over the internet. There's a lot of interest in this particular modality of healing, so hopefully we'll have a good response from that. Mark your calendars. Next week, July 4th, no live show. I will not be able to do a live show next week. We'll post something on the website special for that, hopefully. The following week from that, July 18th, special show. My guest is going to be Bob Neverett. Bob Neverett was the head of the CIA Secret Council of 10. Back in the 1960s and the 1970s, he was part of a special CIA team that basically went after subversives. And he's going to be here to talk about some, really wild things. And so we'll talk about that more coming up. Also, I have James Walbert, Eva Lorgren, Chris Carter, and Adam Go-Rightly. That's the month of August coming up on OffPlanet Radio. And I want to bring on my guest now. In 1994, things changed for him. He made a discovery, or maybe his children made a discovery, I believe. He'll give you the details on something that became kind of a life mission for him. Proof of contact with an alien intelligence through the realm of the fourth dimension. My guest from Florida is LaserLes. Les, how you doing?
Hello, Randy. First, I'd like to thank you very much for having me on your show. I appreciate it, and it's a great honor.
Well, I have to say that we have our friend George Christ, who lives near me, here to thank for this. George came back from a trip to Florida, and he took me into his office one day and showed me these incredible photographs that I thought were art. And they are art. But beyond that, George began to tell me the story about you, Les, and about what these particular photographs meant. And as I went into your website, I began to see that you definitely had hit on something that's unique, profound, and something that we need to share with our audience.
Yes, absolutely. The artwork essentially is our codices or glyphic messages in video form, inscribed in certain artifacts. A very high technology type of inscription technology that went into this, and much further advanced than anything we have today, specifically the ability to embed overlaid hologram images in stone and other artifacts, as we'll discuss.
So the discovery of these was, I guess, what you would call maybe a cosmic accident?
Possibly, if there's order to the universe, then maybe it wasn't such an accident. The way I see it, in my perspective, I spent my years in college studying archaeology, anthropology, first in the Northeast and then ultimately out west in Arizona, where I graduated from Arizona State with a degree. Put that aside and went into microelectronics for 35 years working with different processes, including laser processing of materials, microelectronic circuitry, and understanding the essentials of overlaid photolithic mask images based in silicon, the structure of our integrated circuit, which is the basis of all electronics and things that we have today. So the realm of having an archaeological background and a microelectronic background, and then finding artifacts that were fine line inscribed such that you would think of them as microelectronics, but you're holding an archaeological artifact in your hand, became a fascination to me back in 1994 when my son and niece picked these artifacts up out of the road after a summer of intense inundation in the southeast where these artifacts were found, southeast Missouri. The artifacts were found in an area that once was inhabited by Cahokia mound builders, a very sophisticated civilization that just disappeared, as many of the indigenous American civilizations did in North America and South America. Just vanished, but in their wake they left these intense, these superstructure mounds, some of which have greater height than the pyramids on the Giza Plateau. And it was within the realm of this area, though there were no archaeological sites nearby, that these artifacts were discovered. I was certainly looking for archaeological references. There were none for many miles, no archaeological sites, and this type of artifact was not accepted because the technology to produce such an artifact, overlaid hologram images, was not available. It isn't available today.
Now, let me ask you a question. These particular artifacts that you found, were they part of the indigenous stone deposits of the area themselves? Did they stick out because they were unique to the area? In other words, geologically, did they fit into what you would find in that particular area?
Well, in fact, what I was seeing, I mean, these were surface samples, but I was seeing some of these artifacts, and though at the time I was not doing any type of spectrum illumination imaging of these artifacts, which is what we'll get into, the process that translates or deciphers the message structures within these small stone artifacts, and I was seeing people building walkways and houses and using them in their garden, and so I would think that the area was rich with these types of artifacts, and I would, I call it more of a collection or library of these, and I would think that these photo-engraved stones, or petrophotoglyphs, as I labeled them, would be in collections all over the world. And we'll see, because of what their function was in the realm of human history, the history of mankind. What their function was a portal and a platform for transmitting information from from the artisan, those that inscribed these stones, to humanity. What we have today is the ability to translate them quite easily. Though we don't have the ability to inscribe said artifacts, we can certainly
decode them.
Right, we can decipher them, and that comes at a time also when we have the internet and we have graphics programs, and so the validity of these projections then becomes questionable, because we have the ability today to do so much in terms of graphics and composition, where we didn't 25 years ago really have the ability to put out the realm of graphics and 3D imaging we have today. The best we had back 25, 30 years ago was Fantasia and the ability to see three-dimensional graphics in motion on the screen in that perspective, and then you shoot ahead 25, 30 years, and we have Avatar and all those imaging movies that we have out today. Hollywood's just gone crazy with the new technology, and so today we have the ability to understand what we're looking at. It's quite understandable, but there's a degree of skepticism that goes along with it.
Of course, there is.
So the cloud watching, pareidolia, dementia, all that works together.
How many samples let me ask you this, how many samples did you originally find? Have you found more, and do you have a reason to believe that there are many samples scattered across the planet?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that one.
How many samples did you originally find? How many of the artifacts did you find originally in 1994?
I picked up about 200 of them. They were small. Most of them, the largest ones were, I would say, 4 by 4 inches, 10 by 10 centimeters. The one that I call the key, the Rosetta Stone, I labeled the Genesis petroglyph.
Right.
And this particular stone was the key. The 200 others I picked up along with it. Some of them may or may not have image codices, but I have definitely found in 2 of these artifacts, and one of them is a 2-part stone petroglyph that fits together. I call these artifacts petro photoglyphs. Petro stone, photoglyphs meaning photo inscribed. So they're photo inscribed stones. I coined that phrase. If you Google the word, I'm basically the only reference for these artifacts. And in the process of studying them, I first did topology analysis with a magnifying glass and wrote down characteristics. I cataloged these artifacts, but the one called the Genesis petroglyph was the key.
Okay, I think he had to go away for a second. So if you've gone over to his website, impactoptics.com, all of the images are there. The website is maybe not the easiest thing to navigate. It doesn't have a window system or a menu system, but if you kind of go through that, you're going to see some of the images. There's also a series of links on my website, offplanetradio.com. If you go to the front page, there's a link there to his show page, and there are then links to beforeitsnews.com, the articles that he's put up there as well. You back with me, Les? But on impactoptics.com, if you just go down the front page, you're going to see a lot of these images, and he's lit these up. He's basically run these through a laser process, and basically you can see some of the images. Yeah, in the chat room they're talking about this, the face and the Genesis glyph. The more you look at these, and if you can actually download these graphics as well off of the website, and they're larger images, you'll begin to see that there's some amazing things embedded in these petroglyphs. Okay, I'm going to go to some music here for a couple of minutes and try and find my guest again. It seems like he dropped off. So hang with me here. This we'll see if we can bring him back up. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. This is OffPlanet Radio, believe it or not. We had one of those unfortunate phone incidents that happens occasionally on live radio, so I'm bringing my guest back up now. Les, are you there?
Yeah, sorry about the technical difficulties we're having.
No problem. I think where I left off with you was basically we were going to the number of artifacts that you had found, and from there, once you had discovered these, once you had these samples in your possession, what was your first clue that these were not ordinary rocks?
Well, I studied first the topology of these artifacts. Many of the inscribed lines were highly detailed and fine-lined to less than 5 mils, 5/1000ths of an inch. Many of them were excised, inscribed, or they came out from the stone. And it wasn't until I started taking photographs of these artifacts that I understood the ramifications of what these projections really were. They were photo in detail, and they were contiguous. Mm-hmm. So as motion was applied, position was applied to the stone, such was the image was changing at that point. In definition, that would be a hologram or a whole recording. So I developed a process method to decipher these artifacts, and with this process method, there are 3 variables that were identified. One was spectrum-specific illumination, or the degree, the amount of light, the wavelength of light, which we would understand as color, and also the magnitude of that wavelength applied to illuminate the artifact, the petrophotoglyph. In perspective, most of the images that you can see at impactoptics.com, which is the website. That's impactoptics.com. All of the images that you see there are spectrum developments from the stone. I don't do any fabrication of these images. I just apply the technology of a spectrum-specific illumination or lighting them up. Essentially, that will take a positive image and turn it into a negative image. If you were at the beach, you would prefer to see a blue ocean and white sand, as opposed to a negative of that, which would be a red ocean and black sand. That would be something we wouldn't identify with. We wouldn't have a frame of reference as to being at the beach, or that being a beach type of scenario. However, this is how these artifacts are essentially deciphered. They're deciphered in a negative field. So spectrum-specific illumination is the first variable. The second would be dimensional perspective. The position of the artifact, since it's a stone, there is no up or down to it, and therefore, once after image, it's understandable that image in that particular dimensional plane is going to be part of a continuous story. And as that stone is turned to a greater the debris, the greater the change in the story. The third type technology I use is bilateral symmetry, or looking at the mirror image of the artifact, and this plays a very useful role in developing the whole image communication. Still there, Randy?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah.
Okay.
Your signal's a little wonky, but I'm hanging with you.
I'm sorry about that. Let me see if I can turn this mic up.
The volume's fine. What happens is once in a while, it's just fading. It's like it's drifting. It sounds like drift, but it's really okay. He's using a magic jack. Are you still there? Okay. We're gonna take a break. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. I heard somebody disconnect, and I thought maybe it was you. Okay. So we went through two of the variables, spectrum specific and what was the other one, location specific?
Spectrum, yes, and spatial specific.
Okay.
Spectrum specific, spatial specific, and what I call bilateral symmetry, or using a mirror image to align to a specific identifying factor, or putting a mirror image together, taking one half of the information and folding it out on itself.
Okay.
These are the technologies I use. I also do some background illumination to isolate the images, but that is not as critical as these three independent variables that, when they are applied to these artifacts, will essentially decipher them and provide the alien language, or the xenolinguistic structure, that was intentionally inscribed within these artifacts. I've written a series of articles at a website called beforeitsnews.com, and if you go to this website and go to a search on there and type in Xenolinguistics, you will get the Xenolinguistics series that I put up there.
What we did is we pasted those links up into the chat room for the people there, and those links are also available on your show page at offplanetradio.com. So if anybody's listening to this and isn't on the chat room tonight, just go to the front page of Off Planet Radio. You'll see LaserLes' profile there on the front page. Click on the link that takes you over to the show page under Radio Log, and there are a series of links posted there for beforeitsnews.com and all the articles. So, yeah, everybody can reference that.
And within those articles, what is presented will be understood someday as first contact. We expect contact on our terms, and we go to great lengths to find that through radio telescopes and SETI, and we're looking for bleeps from the sky that will at some point be able to translate and understand as alien technology. But this is contact in every sense, in every aspect of description. This is contact with an unknown intelligence, an unknown or alien intelligence. Happens to be an ancient one too.
Now, in terms of understanding that this is an alien contact, when did you begin to develop the xenolinguistic side of this? When did you begin to see that there was something inscribed in this that was a language that was communicating to us? What you call the glyphics, the glyphs, the glyphic aspects of this language?
It was about a year after I discovered these artifacts, 1995, maybe, towards the fall of 95, after I had taken some photographs of these artifacts, noticing that there was much more that can be seen in a photograph, and this was not a negative translation, but rather a positive translation. I guess it was accidental that I performed a negative translation of the Genesis petroglyph at that point, and then I saw what could be defined as photographic images, photo in detail, orthographic images, not isometric, like the stick figures you might see in a petroglyph mural out in the west on a cave wall. This is rather a photo detailed images with reflections of light and 3 dimensions to these image structures. when I deciphered them this way, there was so much there that it was difficult to understand. It was almost comical to see some of the things that were coming out of these stones until I found a reference, a basis for understanding these projections, and that basis for understanding these projections is the database of human knowledge. So if you see a projection and want to understand what you're looking at, it's likely that there is a reference out there in the database of human knowledge that will identify what you're looking at. Likewise, if you write down the descriptive elements of what you're seeing projected from a petro photoglyph, you would be essentially writing the database of human knowledge concurrently. You would be writing scripture, you would be writing mythology, and you would be writing history as we understand it. So these artifacts are essentially portals to ancient knowledge that is not understood today, ancient knowledge that is lost.
Maybe what we can do here is kind of maybe work through some of the images a little bit. The people in the chat room have access to this. The people who hear it in the archives later will also have links they can look at. I'm curious about the inscribed star map.
The star map?
Yeah.
The star map I did not discover as part of the Genesis petroglyph.
Okay, maybe I'm out of order.
It was over 10 years after I had started working with these that I finally understood that there was a highly detailed star map embedded, and that only came after I moved here to the west coast of Florida and looked out one evening and saw the ancient tale of Orion and the Pleiades and Taurus and the Sirius, and it was just right out there, hanging out over the Gulf, that I then realized that the images I had been seeing for 10 years were in the sky. What's interesting is the technology that went into petrophotographs was provided in other artifacts that we have and we revere today as, sacred artifacts of religion. One such artifact is the Shroud of Turin.
Right.
And though it wasn't discovered until the 14th century, this single artifact, I feel, was a key in bringing medieval Europe with its darkness and the Crusades and everything that was going on that was counterproductive, and it brought this medieval Europe mindset to a renaissance that occurred at the end of the 1300s, about the time this artifact was discovered. And then, though it wasn't understood until they invented the camera, the artifact then became understood for what it was. When the camera was invented, they first took a picture of this shroud and saw that it developed in a negative sphere, similar to the translation process that's used with petrophotographs. Mm-hmm. So therein is an artifact, and they have tried to discern what this artifact is, but to me, and on the face of it, it's an inscribed cloth with the inscription of the image of an individual who could be identified as Jesus exists. Certainly, an individual who was the product of a crucifixion, judging by the marks on the body, whether it was a real impression of a body fabricated in the 14th century, or whether it was an inscribed artifact that occurred in the 14th century. It's the way it translates in a sphere of spectrum-specific illumination. Another such artifact, similarly, found 300 years later in the New World, and similarly changing the mindset of the New World towards a similar persuasion, was the tilma, the Virgin of Guadalupe, that's currently held in a sacred temple in church in, I believe, Monterey at this time. This tilma, I believe it was discovered by an indigenous peasant, was no doubt being in the process of being converted by the missionaries in 1531, just 39 years after Columbus discovered America. This artifact shows up, changed the persuasion of the entire New World, where there was the Mayan, the Aztec, the Olmec, the Inca. They all had rituals of sacrifice. The ball fields that were discovered at Teotihuacan and Chichen Itza exemplify what was going on there, where they would have a sports activity, and then they would have ritual killing. Well, this particular artifact changed the persuasion of the old world and brought the New World, rather, and brought the people of the New World towards a single persuasion that was being introduced by the old world during the contact of 1492. We hear today in 2012, 2012 happens to be the new 1492. You hear many things about the end of the world, and maybe that's not so. Maybe it's the beginning of a new enlightenment. So as the people of in 1491 on both sides of the world, the New World and the Old World, had no idea who was out there, or that there was even anything out there in 1491. In 1493, it was understood that after contact, human contact, that they were not alone, that there was other people in the world, and there was a new enlightenment at that particular time. This might just be the case today. The indications and the messages that I have been developing and perceived from these artifacts seem to indicate a new point of contact that we will inevitably experience within the near future, possibly this year.
Now, a lot of people are going to say that you can read anything into an image, and that isn't being cynical, but I do think it's healthy skepticism. Some of your images you obviously have to interpret from a basis of knowledge. Can you kind of give us an idea of how you tie these images together with what you call the database of human history?
Xenolinguistics 103, I believe, is a good example, because it talks about a stone, a petrophotoglyph called the unicorn petroglyph. And if you go to impactoptics.com, you'll see developments from the unicorn petroglyph. And in this particular particular artifact, I've taken to a number of universities, including Arizona State University, which is the university I have a degree from. Went to the head of the department who I had known and was abruptly told that there was nothing there that could been inscribed in this particular artifact. And yet the image that propagates from this artifact, the unicorn image, is clearly identifiable by 9 out of 10 people that I have shown it to. So you see the image of a unicorn, but the image is not of a happy little horse with a horn dancing around the field. It's of a creature with funky vision, photographic image, and the unicorn image is in a ditch or a furrow with a band around its neck, a blanket on its back, its tongue being pulled out of its mouth, a hook in its toes, and essentially every aspect of this projection that you are seeing is a detailed purpose of specifically the end of.
Okay, well, here we go again. Yeah, his connection is just not doable at this point. So let me take you out to some music here, and we'll come back in a moment or so, and we'll reconnect with Les, and hopefully we'll have a little better connection. We'll be right back. Okay, and we are back. And I do have Les back on the line. We switched phone lines, so I think now we've got a little better sound quality. Les, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Randy. And again, I apologize for...
No problem. These kind of things happen, yeah. We were talking about the unicorn petroglyph, and that is in the webpage that is on beforeitsnews.com called what was that again? 103?
Xenolinguistics 103, right.
Okay.
Well, you can get there from the main page of the Impact Optics website, or before its news. Just type in to a search block there, and I think the search block is in the upper right corner. Xenolinguistics, Xeno. That's not Z. That's XENOLINGUISTICS, and it'll give you the whole series there. And then 103. The tale of it was originally called Nuglio Bel Ninike, or the Righteous Sufferer, and Wikipedia defines this story as the Book of Job, which commonly refers to Job and his discussions with God being manipulated by. As he is being manipulated by Satan. The profound question that's asked through this story is, why do the righteous suffer? As Job was a righteous individual, and he was made to suffer in his trial and tribulation before God. Mm-hmm. And what was most provocative here is God's response to Job at the end. Starts in chapter 39, and it goes right through the end. Chapter 42 is a small conclusion, but it's actually highly detailed in Job 39, 40, and 41. And there is essentially a portal being developed for communication between the deity, God, and and Job. And this portal is no different than the portal that was developed for Moses, which happened to have been a burning bush. The portal developed for Jacob was a ladder with the transcending and descending angels. So these portals of communication between the deity and the human have been identified in scriptures, in mythology, throughout the history of mankind. And the portal developed for Job is a creature, and the creature happens to be, if you read the King James Version, it's specifically identified as the unicorn.
Yes.
Chapter 39. Can you bind the unicorn with his band in the furrow? Or will he harrow in the valleys after thee? This goes on and on in a descriptive, poetic verse. Chapters 39, 40, the creature is called a behemoth, which is clearly identified as a pastoral giant. But verse after verse, line after line of descriptive element identifying a creature. In chapter 41, this creature is identified as the Leviathan. And I will get scholars argue with me until they're blue in the face, but in the context of Job 41, Leviathan, which is a transliterated Hebrew word, Leviathan, meaning coiled. It doesn't necessarily mean coiled serpent.
Right.
It means coiled, and in this case, it's referring to the coil in the creature's single horn. So the number of verses describing this particular creature, identifying this portal of communication between God and Job, is more extensive than anything I have ever seen, and I would clearly like somebody to tell me that there is a greater physical description of any person, place, or thing in Bible, in Scripture, in any religious scripture, or in any mythology. There's nothing that is described in greater detail than this particular creature. And it's the creature that the descriptions in Job 39, 40, and 41 are clearly projecting from the unicorn petroglyph, the creature that's developed there, the creature that projects in the hologram image. If you were to write down what you were seeing, and the book of Job wasn't written, you would be essentially writing those final chapters of the book of Job. You could write this, and you're basically translating then from a stone using modern technology, and I got to say that this stone is somewhat of a time capsule message system, because it does require our modern technology to decipher. So this is a viable scientific explanation as to how Scripture could very well have been understood and related.
So maybe at this point you could tell me what it is that's being translated in this petroglyph. It is a compelling image, and the more I look at it, I see it. I see movement in it. How is that communicated? How did you manage to impart the movement that's going on in this, the different positions of the unicorn?
The three factors involved. Well, the third one, the bilateral symmetry, is not applied here as much, but spectrum-specific illumination and spatial-specific position. The images are then captured on a camera and then laid out in a contiguous format, and it creates movement. A hologram is movement. These are perfect holograms, and I'm going to show you in a minute what I mean by a perfect hologram, a perfect three-dimensional hologram, and I'll also show you how one of the sacred artifacts that we have had since 1531 also, actually 1539, also develops hologram images in 3 dimensions. But when you move the stone and take an image, capture that image, the image moves and the codex or the story also changes, and it develops from that point. So the image of the unicorn, and if you'll notice in some of them, there's on the other end of the tether, there's another what looks like a bird with horns on the top, and that would Quetzalcoatl. So what you have in one structured projection is tethered avatars of the old world, the unicorn, and the new world, Quetzalcoatl, or the feathered serpent. Ask any Mormon, and he might just tell you that the Quetzalcoatl was the manifestation of Jesus in the New World.
Oh, yeah, that's accepted by any number of different mystical groups, absolutely.
Yes, and essentially, Quetzalcoatl and the unicorn were avatars of the Creator, other forms of the Creator, of this alien intelligence that we understand through these artifacts. And I will show you that at some point they actually show themselves and show the detail of their images. And if it appears somewhat draconian, so be it. But specifically in their eyes, you will see what appear to be reptilian remnants in the eyes of the projection of these aliens. We'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
But we're talking about the unicorn and tethered avatar, Quetzalcoatl, and then in a further development down, I'm looking specifically at Xenolinguistics 103, you'll see the unicorn actually ascending from an arm, and the arm supports a wrist that has been pierced, which is an interesting aspect to the fact that the Book of Job is buried deep within the Old Testament, and here we have a clear reference to the New Testament and Jesus and the crucifixion.
What's interesting to me about this is that I have interviewed somebody who's done a lot of studies into the Shroud of Turin. His name is Dr. Andrew Silverman. He is a physiologist who lives in Great Britain. He described the Shroud of Turin as containing what he called distance-coded information, meaning that when the shroud was examined from both sides, there was actual distancing information that enabled them to establish both sides of the shroud itself and determine some very specific things physiologically about the figure in the shroud. And that's why I was kind of pressing you on this, because I'm seeing the same thing with these as well, that what we have here is basically distance-coded information and the ability to move them and the ability to effectively do what you did here, which is animate them in a three-dimensional fashion.
Well, if the inscription technology was the same, then the manifested projections would be the same. And I think you've just grasped what I've been trying to alluding to here, that the sacred artifacts, the shroud, the Virgin of Guadalupe tilma, and the projections from these stones that I discovered in 94 are similar because they are products of the same type of technology of inscription, which is an alien technology. We can't reproduce the Shroud of Turin. We can't reproduce the Virgin of Guadalupe, and I know for a fact we cannot reproduce any of the images that propagate from the petro photoglyph. in Xenolinguistics 102. It's at the bottom of the 103. There's a link to 102. You will actually see a development that was made by me using bilateral symmetry and, of course, negative imaging, which is mostly the way we view the Shroud of Turin. But you will see the image in the Shroud with bilateral symmetry left.
For those of you in the chat room, again, I'll just remind you that the links are up on the website, on the show page, which you can get to from the front page, for these links over to Before It's News and the articles that LaserLes has put up there. We kind of knew this was going to be a visual show tonight. It's kind of visual radio, so hopefully you're able to follow along with this, because it is kind of important to follow along. My computer just crashed, folks, so we just lost all of our lines. I'm going to go to music because apparently I have no idea what's going on. The main computer system here just crashed with our phone lines. So once again, we got to take a break and come back on the other side. We will be back in a few minutes with more of OffPlanet Radio on a night when it appears technology is conspiring against me.